Welcome to Before the Bid, your connection to some of the world's best livestock sales. Stay tuned as your host, Andy Howe, takes you coast to coast, stopping along the way to talk with producers about their operation, their livestock, and of course, their upcoming sales. Let's get to it.
Welcome, livestock friends, to this Before the Bid podcast. And on this one, we are going out east. We're going to be out in New York for this podcast, and we're going to be in eastern New York, and we're also going to be in central New York. And I have two gentlemen on the phone that have taken big risks and made very big moves and started over from where they were and have built a program up and just really going along with it. And they are going to have a sale coming up, and that sale is going to be on October the 22nd. And again, it's going to be out in New York. It is going to be in Lyons, New York. And they're going to have it at one of the farms here, and so they're going to gather a couple of these cattle. There's a couple other operations that are in this that are going to come together and have this sale, and we're going to be talking about the Tullyfergus Angus sale. And I have on the phone with me Robert Groom from Lyons, New York, and also I have Doug Giles from Millbrook, New York. Guys, want to welcome you here to the podcast.
Well, appreciate it. Thanks, Andy. It's a privilege to be on and talk some cattle. That's what we like to do.
We've got a few things to talk about before we get there, and one of them kind of failed to mention here on the introduction. We've got a legal immigrant that decided he needed to come to the United States and make a huge move. Born in Ireland, and then went to Scotland. Is that right, Robert?
Born in England. Went to Scotland, which is a lot more unpopular.
The move to Scotland from England is you
it's very unpopular. Very unpopular.
Okay. Okay, but you made yourself okay right there. For quite a few years, right, in Scotland.
Yep. So kind of where we started the first Tullyfergus herd, and that was the name of the farm in Scotland. And when I came to the States, I figured, well, there's probably no one else going to be using that name, so I might as well, keep it and start up with it here. Right. The worst thing about it is it uses up 11 characters of the animal name, so it kind of limits your options a little bit. Right. Which, if you go to the back of the catalog, there's an animal in there that was running out of characters to get the name. So,
yeah, that is quite a few to use up in that.
Yeah.
Well, Robert, we'll start with you, and we'll get to Doug here in just a minute. But again, an immigrant from England to Scotland, and then you decided to come to the United States, and you've been here almost 20 years. Is that right?
24 years, actually, just coming up here around actually the 20th of October will be been here 24 years. And yeah, I had a registered Angus herd in Scotland. I started that myself in 1987. I'm a reformed dairyman. That's what my family did for generations before, was milk cows. And my dad and myself didn't really fancy milking cows for the rest of our lives. And
right.
We did something different. We moved to Scotland and we got into beef and sheep operation and growing some small grains, and then got into the Angus cattle just kind of by accident. And then I got an opportunity to come to and travel the States and study the breed here. And when I went home, that's when I became an Angus breeder. That's when I had a real focus then on what it meant to be in this breed and what it was going to take to breed good cattle and what good cattle really looked like. And so that was an eye-opener. And then the other thing that I saw when I was here was a National Junior Angus show. And there was nothing like that anywhere else. And there's certainly nothing like that in Britain. And I just kind of made a deal with myself that if I ever had the opportunity that I would come to the States, and it would be an opportunity for my kids to participate in something that was just a phenomenal experience. And so that's what got me going, and that's what tripped my trigger to look for an opportunity. And when I found one, and who knew it'd be in New York, but here it is. And so
the cattle country of the world. Yeah.
It's not often that you link New York and the land of opportunity. You're more thinking along
right. Maybe the land in that big city over there, but as far as agriculture, probably not. Not what people would think is the land of opportunity.
No, but it looked like an opportunity, and so we sold up everything over there that we had and packed what we couldn't sell into a shipping crate and moved on over. Myself, my wife, and my son was 18 months old at the time. So that's what we did and went from there. It's been a wild ride.
So was it basically a move to be able to raise Angus cattle?
The way I likened it was that I don't want to overstate it, but I was doing pretty well with the Angus cattle we had in the Britain.
Okay.
That we were breeding over there. We were selling some bulls. We had a pretty good registered herd. I'd bought a couple of American donor cows, and we were flushing them in Canada to circumvent some of the rules to try and get new genetics.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a very successful dispersal. I was serving on the council of the society at that time, which would be like our board of directors here.
Okay.
And at the time I was like, 28, 29, 30 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were doing pretty well, and a lot of people thought I was flat out nuts to throw all that up in the air and just go take a kind of a manager type job in New York. But it was like playing the one-armed bandit, down at the local pub versus going to Vegas and playing poker.
Right.
And the big game was here.
Uh-huh.
And this is where I wanted to be. This is, and I say that the Junior Angus program is something that I was so impressed with, like the Green Jackets and their maturity and their ability and their leadership and the whole deal. That was just nothing like that. I mean, I was 21 years old when I came to the States first in '89, and I didn't know any of my friends, including myself, that had that level of maturity at 21 years old. I mean,
right.
it was just completely different, but it was different in a very good way. And it was different in a way that made me think that this was the opportunity that I wanted for my kids.
Right.
That it was going to be better.
And that's dedication, especially for the kids to pack up and move. And you left some behind as well, some people behind that are still there. And where are they at?
Well, so my folks carried on farming there. My sister in 2000 actually had gone out to New Zealand a couple of years before to work out there, and she'd met a guy out there, and then they got married in 2000, and they have a farm down in New Zealand. And in 2014, my folks emigrated to New Zealand, sold the farm, and emigrated to New Zealand to spend their retirement down there, which is kind of like going to Florida. I mean, the weather's pretty even, and it's, nothing too wild. They can play golf every day if they want, and
right.
It's my dad goes and helps my brother-in-law they have some vineyards and grow quite a few grapes for a couple of companies over there. And then they have some livestock as well. So he still gets to keep his hand in doing that and keep some of the birds out of the vineyards. So he got to take his 12 gauge with him and put that to use. So, my dad was always a very good shot. I mean, we ate quite a few Christmas dinners where the turkey was one that he'd won at a clay shoot somewhere.
Oh, awesome.
He was a pretty good shot. Still is a pretty good shot, and he's still pushing 80 years old, and he's a good shot. So anyway, they settled in down there, and so there's just my brother and sister-in-law left in Scotland, and he was never interested in the farm anyway. He's always worked in like human resources and things like that. So yeah, everything was worked out pretty nicely. My folks have been here and visited us. We've been to New Zealand a couple of times, visit them, and it's interesting. Get to see some different things.
Neat. Well, tell us a little about the family that you brought over with you.
So, yeah, my son was 18 months old when he came over, and he grew up. He showed cattle a little bit. He wasn't really that into it. His interests were elsewhere. He went to college out in Oklahoma, met a gal out there, got married, and then actually they moved back to Lyons last year. So they're working out here. And then my older daughter just turned 21 yesterday, which is hard to believe.
Oh, wow.
She's halfway through a master's in Connecticut, so she's working away there. And then my youngest is 16, and she's the one who loves to show cattle. She lives it and breathes it, and she does a lot of our halter breaking now, and she's into it.
Right.
So,
I was going to say she's kind of diehard, according to some of the things you post on your Facebook and things.
Oh, yeah. She is a serious competitor. She loves showmanship. She loves to compete. I mean, everyone likes to win, but she likes the competition, and she's made a lot of good friends in this business across the state, across the region, across the country. It's just a fun deal to be part of.
Right. Yeah, and across the country, when you go to breakfast out in Nebraska at the National Junior Angus Show, and there's Robert Groom sitting there eating breakfast with you at the hotel, why, man, that's dedication and going the distance for your daughter.
Yeah. It was a lot more fun with $2 diesel. I know that much.
That's true. That's true. Next year, I hope we can get this thing under control, because both of us are going to be hurting, but probably not me as much as you are.
No, it made a dent this time.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that as well too. So that's awesome, and what a great story. And you're still sending some things back to Scotland. Is that right? To do a
Yeah,
few
yeah.
things?
We had a young lady came and worked for us in 2015, and at the end of the summer, she was really into the cattle. She really understood what we were trying to do as far as our breeding program. And I said, well, we've got some eggs in the tank here. We've got some other cows we could flush. We could send some embryos over there, and I got a friend over there that would have some recips that they could put them into and get her started, basically a straight U.S. pedigree
Mm-hmm.
herd built on cows and cow families that we developed here.
Mm-hmm.
And so we send a couple of 3 different lots of embryos over there now, and their herd is slowly growing. And, the biggest challenge is trying to find sires that she can use on those cows,
Mm-hmm.
it's because there's not that many American genetics managed to get over there. And a lot of the stuff that does is not something I would pick, to use.
Okay.
And so that makes it a little tougher, but she started being able to sell a few bulls, and she's got some interest in what they're doing. We're basically doing it like we do. They calve the heifers at 2 years old, and that's not that common over there,
Right.
or not as common as it should be. A lot of people still calve heifers at 3 years old.
Right.
And so she's doing that stuff and cull hard and look for good udder quality, good feet and legs, thrifty cattle that will gain and do well and stick around for a long time. I mean, longevity is the key. So
Right.
that's what we're doing.
And they're probably a little better looking than most of those other cattle over there, aren't they? Is my understanding.
Yeah, I agree with that. Some of those kind of look pretty hard to look at.
Yeah, Dad talks about those cattle are so hard to look at, and so maybe we'll get them a little American style over there.
Yeah, it's tough because of their grading system.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the reality is that if subsidies go away, it's going to be very hard to be profitable with a lot of those very big cows
Mm-hmm.
that are very heavy muscled and very hard doing.
Mm-hmm.
It's just going to be a tough haul to try and make that pay.
Right.
And so I think at that point there's going to be some sense of reality is going to return to it.
Right. And Robert, your operation now in New York, and it probably kind of goes along with those over at Scotland. You try to do a forage-based operation, correct?
Right, because I'm cheap. I mean, I hate to spend money on stuff when the cattle can forage it themselves. We try and graze for as long as we can. I mean, we manage our grazing. We do some rotational grazing. I mean, I'm not overly intense about it, but we rotate pastures and we try and keep them moving and keep the grass coming on. And we don't feed any grain to anything once it's more than a year old. That's the end of the grain ration.
Oh, wow.
They get it from weaning till about a year of age, and then we cut it off. It's hay or it's baleage or it's grass.
Oh, wow.
And that's what they'll eat, and in some tough years they've eaten corn stalks as well.
Right.
So,
right.
But that's the basis of it. Is my innate thriftiness is making them work for a living.
Right.
Keep those input costs down, but still have something that's functional and looks good.
Right.
And works. And
Right.
again, sticks around for a long, long time. I like cows that live till they're 12, 13, 14 years old.
Right. Right. And be able to pass that on to your customers as well.
Right.
That they can do kind of what they want with those cattle. If they want to feed them a little bit, they can, and they'll be fine. But if they want to use them on forage, why, they're bred for that.
Right.
Right.
And that's how most of our commercial customers, I mean, there's no bells and whistles there. They're just, those cows expect to work. And so we want to manage our cows like our commercial customers would. And so that when they use our bulls, they're going to get females that they can keep and use. And they're going to have steer calves that are going to be worth something in the marketplace.
Right. Very diverse and do what they want. So
Mm-hmm.
awesome. Also, you've got a big month or so coming up here in the American Angus Association. You are a board candidate again for the American Angus Association.
I am, for my sins. I was encouraged at the Junior Angus Show in the summer to consider running again by several people, and I hadn't really thought about it at that point, but then I thought, well, what's the harm? What's the worst that can happen?
Right.
The worst that can happen is, I get beat again, and I go home and get on with my life. So,
right.
That's, if that's the worst that can happen, I'm pretty good with that.
Absolutely.
But I love the breed. I mean, I am a fanatic, and I'd love the opportunity to serve on that board. And I look at the board right now, and there's a lot of people on there that I'd just love to be able to work with for the next 3 years and pick their brains and hopefully be able to contribute something useful to the discussion as the breed moves forward, and maybe bring a little different perspective and that be useful to the breed and the membership as a whole. That's my goal.
Right.
This needs to be good for everybody, and it can be.
Right. Correct.
And it should be.
Right.
It should be. We're a member association. Whether you've got 10,000 cows or one cow, your voice is equal.
Right.
And your interests ought to be considered.
Right. I appreciate that thought and that outlook.
Thank you.
That is awesome. That is awesome. Doug Giles, how did you meet up with the guy from Scotland, Robert Groom?
Well, part of me would like to say there was a bottle of scotch, but I don't like
Now we know the real part. Yeah, okay.
If there was, I didn't buy it.
Yeah, we've traveled together. I know that part. I think we were talking about this before, and I think that Robert and I met when I was working for Highfield Angus in Clinton Corners at one of their sales in the late 90s.
Okay.
And then we, over the next couple of decades, much as that makes us sound older than I think we are, we've served together on State Angus Board and State Beef Producers and helped run and start a couple of different shows for the kids. And we're always kind of bouncing into each other.
Well, that sounds awesome. Doug, tell us a little bit about your program, and tell us a little bit about who's involved with that as well, if you would.
Sure. I left my family farm in 95. I went out to Highfield Angus. I built a bunch of panels and gates, and I came out for 30 days to help them get ready for their first sale.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of 30 days, they offered me the herdsman job.
Mm-hmm.
And this part's a true story. And I don't remember if it was 95 or 96. They said, we want to give you a house, health insurance, a truck, and $20,000 a year.
Wow.
I called home and I told my dad, because we were farming together. My dad, my grandfather, and myself were farming together
Mm-hmm.
in Western New York. And he says, if you don't take the job, I'm gonna. He says, that's more than the three of us draw put together. I decided then that maybe I'd come out for a couple of years, and then I always had it in the back of my head that I'd end up back home. I was at Highfield for 3 years, and then I worked for the Colgate family for 5 or 6, and I had the opportunity to take over the management at Walbridge Farm, which has been here since '52.
Oh, wow, yeah.
George Perkins started that, and they were huge through the 60s and the 70s. They did a lot of showing, and they had a farm in New York and one in Kentucky, and a bull sale and a female sale, and it was an honor to work for Mr. Perkins. And he was the nicest man that I've ever met in my entire life.
Oh, wow, that's neat.
Just a joy.
Mm-hmm.
And he passed away 2 years after I started working here. And his daughter called me one night, and she says, I don't want to inherit all of Dad's junk in New York. Not the word that she used, but that's the word I'll use today.
Right.
She said, how'd you like to buy us out from the estate? And I need to know in 15 minutes.
Oh, my gosh. Nothing like changing your life, and you only have 15 minutes to do it.
Yeah. And at the time, I think my kids were at Disneyland or something. I was sitting at home by myself. We had literally had about a 12-minute conversation, and the family held a note on the cows and the equipment, and we've been leasing the farm from them since 2007 or 8.
Oh, wow.
And it's been a hell of a ride.
Right.
It's me and my oldest son are here now. My youngest son was here, and he decided that, he was going to go do something else for a little while.
Mm-hmm.
And, still have hope that he'll come back. Gunner's the one that he's like Evie is for Robert. He's 5 years old. He showed a steer that was better than any steer I've ever showed in my entire life, and that just set the hook for him. And he's been all in ever since then. He's had the opportunity. He's interned for some people, from here to South Dakota and Nebraska. We send him away in the summertime and let him intern with some different people and get some experience. And before he was 18, he was fitting on better cattle at national shows than I ever did. It wasn't the experience that I had growing up, but he's had it already, and he's a way better fitter than I ever thought that I could be. We did a lot of showing when they were in the junior program, and we've kind of transitioned a little bit away from that and got back to where my kind of cows, not far off the way Robert thinks, moderate frame, functional, good-footed, no maintenance kind of cows, good uddered, good feet, I still like them pretty nice fronted, but they don't have to be show fronted. And
Right.
but we finish all of our own steers and some of our customer steers. We got a pretty decent meat business going that we've worked at for a decade, and that's kind of made our cash flow. And between that and we sell, most of our stuff is sold private treaty. We sell all of our bulls private treaty, and most of the females that we sell are private treaty.
Okay. So your meat deal, a custom meat deal, you have that many clients that you're, what are you feeding, 60, 70 head or so and killing them custom?
Yeah, I mean, we always have between 75 and 100 steers on feed. It seems like it never gets below 75. But yeah, we got hooked up with a home delivery company that's about halfway between me and New York City. And he's been a customer for 7 or 8 years, and he's a steady customer every month. We've got a couple of farm markets. We got a handful of restaurants.
Oh, neat.
I had a farm store for 7 or 8 years. So we've played the farm market game. You know, we've transitioned to a more of a wholesale approach to it and let other people deal with the people.
Right.
And we can do what we do better. We can raise it. We can get them, you know, we grow all of our own stuff here. You know, that's what we can do. I don't want to, I mean, we know how to raise them and truck them and cut them and wrap them and all that kind of stuff, and let somebody else deal with John Q. Public for the most part. And
Right.
Then everybody gets to make a little money. And we've actually made some female customers just from selling people beef and, you know, letting them sell it at their farm store. Or it's been a symbiotic relationship, and it's a lot less stressful for me now that we don't have the store open.
Right now that you don't have to deal with the public all the time, and
Mm-hmm.
like you say, do what you do without having to put up with some of those things, I guess.
Yeah.
You say your herd's pretty commercial.
I'd say we treat it like it's a commercial herd. We don't creep feed any calves. If you don't get pregnant in a 75-day window, they leave. If we trim their feet, they leave. If they don't have a calf every year, they leave. You know, if they raise a calf below average or is not a keeper, they leave.
Wow.
You know, we don't make any excuses for them. It costs the same amount of money to feed a good one as it does to feed a bad one.
You're exactly right.
You know, we've been fortunate. We've raised some pretty damn good bulls that we've used that have left some awesome females for us. And I've bought some pretty good bulls that we've been lucky enough to use. We actually, this spring, I bought LD Grazer from Musgraves, and he's walking the pasture here. And I don't expect that I'll AI a single cow this fall. He cleaned up 50 cows and bred 35 in the spring, and he'll breed another 35 this fall. And we're really excited for his first calves to come in the spring. He's the kind of bull that I wish they were all like that. I wish it would be that easy.
Right. Yeah, so it sounds like you've made your life a lot easier, not dealing with the retail stuff, and now you're limiting some of your AI stuff and not having to do all that. That sounds pretty good to me.
Well, you know, I'd like to say that as I'm getting older, I'm getting wiser, but a lot of people would argue with that.
No comment.
Robert's going to stay quiet on that, but it sounds to me like you're doing well for yourself and getting rid of some of those things that maybe you don't need, I guess.
Well, we sat and really looked at it from a time, a money, and an energy standpoint. You know, buying semen, cycling cows, AI in cows, AI certificates, semen costs, all these things, and where we were at and what we could on a bull. And, you know, we stole Grazer. I mean, I'd have paid more for him if they asked it.
Maybe you shouldn't say that. Very loud.
Oh, Tyler and I had this conversation.
Oh, okay.
And he told me what the people after I bought him were offering him. The people after me were in the $20,000 and $30,000 range, and they would have been right.
Right.
I don't know. Maybe I'm just getting slower. I don't know. But don't get me wrong. We're still going to AI cows, but we're still pretty excited about him right now. And he's going to be perfect on our Z11 daughters. And that was the plan. I mean, we had actually tried. I was sitting online trying to buy a Grazer son in their sale, and I couldn't get one bought for what I ended up buying Grazers for. So that was the direction we wanted to go. And when the opportunity came, we jumped at it, and it's fortunate.
Yeah. And you've got some grazer influence coming here in this sale.
Yeah, there's a couple of cows bred to them. Yep, we've actually there's a couple of Z11 daughters that are bred to them. So that's that was the mating that we were trying to make, and I think those are going to be really special because those are two breeding like to like and knowing what you're going to get, and the cow families that are behind those cows. I know Robert talked about longevity.
Mm-hmm.
Our 994 cow, the Alila, she goes back to a cow that we got from Robert Elliott that had a couple of bulls and stud. She had her last calf from me when she was 18 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And every one of her daughters, you look down her pedigree, we still have all of her daughters. I mean, that's the only reason we can get rid of this 2-year-old is because we have so many from that family, because the longevity is bred into that family from the ground up. I don't know if she ever had her feet trimmed when she was in Tennessee, but I know that they were never touched when she came to New York. So
Mm-hmm. Good deal. You guys have a couple more consigners in this sale. McCracken's are also in this sale, and Hinckley's are also in this sale. Can one of you guys tell us just a little bit about their program?
Sure. Roger and Alice McCracken have been partners in our sale for quite a long time, at least the last 10 years, maybe a little bit longer. Roger's been in the registered Angus business since the early 90s. He got into it. He's like me, he's a reformed dairyman. He got tired of milking cows and jumped into the Angus business. Solid AI program, mostly been using Gen X bulls, and he's shown at State Fair in the past and won cow-calf division and the heifer division there a couple different times. Their cattle are pretty extensively grazed. They feed little silage during the winter, but they basically are grazing them in the summer. It still has a pretty strong AI program. Just got a very solid herd. They're generally got good feet and legs. They have excellent udders. Really good udder quality right through that herd. And we always trying to get him to part with 2 or 3 heifers he doesn't want to get rid of.
Right, he's got a couple in here.
Yeah, well, he made my daughter go through his calves and pick the ones she likes, and then he's consigning those. so for sure, I know that the 2 heifer calves and one of the bred heifers are ones that we looked at, and then actually the Eagle Eye heifer is one that I looked at as a calf last year and kind of picked her out of the lot. And then we didn't go any further on him, but he has some good ones, and he's just a good guy. He knows his cattle, he knows what he wants, and he does an excellent job. Andrew Hinckley has been a bull customer of mine since 2005. I think he bought his first bull from me in partnership with another guy that had a registered herd. Over the years, he's bought several more bulls. And just the last couple of years, he's started to get back into the registered Angus again. He was away from it a little while, but he bought a couple of bred heifers from me, a couple of pretty good ones, actually. And so he's selling a couple of bred females that are bred to one of my bulls, and then a couple of heifer calves by a bull that's actually a maternal brother to the heifer pregnancy that we're going to sell in the sale as well. So there's a lot of our genetics that's kind of wound in through some of this stuff. One of Roger's lots is actually out of a flush sister to a cow we won State Fair with in 2016. So, you know, and I've used mirror image, the bull that Z11 that Doug had. We've got him wound through some of our pedigrees. He was just a really awesome looking bull and very sound and functional, and we've got quite a few good daughters out of him. So although we've all got our own program,
right,
we all kind of see similar things, and we try and consign cattle that are similar, going to be patterned and similar purpose.
Right. Very good. Again, we're talking about the Tullyfergus Angus sale, and again, it is going to be in Lyons, New York. You guys are going to have some feeder calves and some select female lots and future herd sires. And the feeder calves thing, explain that just a little.
I've marketed feeder calves from our bull customers from the get-go.
Ah, okay.
The first herd that I came to manage here was selling bulls, and I basically chased down their bull customers and said, what do you think of the idea of pool marketing your feeder steers?
Mm-hmm.
And we had 2 or 3 people jumped on it, and we put them basically out to a private bid. And we did that for probably 7 or 8 years, and the same buyer was coming back every year wanting these calves, and he always put a very fair market price, and typically it was 50 to 20 cents over the top end of the local feeder market.
Oh, wow, good.
And we were offering a guaranteed product. We were weaning them. They were dry and healed, castrated. They were bunk broke. They were vaccinated and boosted. They were dewormed. They were healthy and that they were ready to go and gain, and people who bought them found that they did perform on the rail as well, and they were getting pretty good premiums for those carcasses. So it got to the point where people wanted to come in and take 20 from here and 20 from there, and we decided probably the best thing to do was just to throw them all in the sale.
Sure.
And bid them off and sell them for projected delivery date, before the snow flies, so somewhere around the middle of November. And with all those things done and specify a vaccination program, and so we started doing that, and every year we sold more and more and more. Now the last 2 years have been a bit of a disaster because of the whole COVID thing, and the kind of sale took a bit of almost a hiatus. We were still marketing some of the feeder calves, but not as many as we had in the past. And this year is probably the smallest group we'll have sold in probably 15 years, but I think part of that is due to the stronger market, and I think a lot more buyers are trying to source some of these calves right off the farm and not go through the sale. But we sell them on the front end of the sale. It's a service for our bull customers, and we want them to know that they're important to our business, and by offering their feeder calves through our sale, exposing them to a bigger audience, bigger pool of buyers, and better prices. And we typically are 20 to 30 cents over the local market. Usually it's got a sale that same day, and we're usually over the top of anything they have. They're a decent market. So we do that, and then that also establishes a commercial base in what are these purebred field males worth to someone.
Right.
If it's a weaned heifer calf that might be a show prospect, well, if you just sold the steers for a couple bucks a pound, then you've got a real commercial floor in her. So that's the kind of deal that we do with them.
Interesting way to go about that. Don't see that very often.
It takes a little time, it takes a little effort, but it's worthwhile because it's driven our bull sales for sure.
Right.
It's also it's New York, and we have to do things a little bit different out of necessity because we don't have the numbers.
Right. The Tullyfergus Angus sale, Saturday, October 22nd, starts at noon. On that day. So you guys are going to start the catalog. Where can we find the catalog? First of all, it's right there on Robert Groom, your Facebook page. I know that much.
Yeah, and it's on our website, tullyfergus.com. There's a link right to it there, and you can go right into it to there. We do have some hard copies available. We've actually got the second round of the hard copies are coming in the mail because there was a glitch on the first round, and one of the lots is missing. So,
whoops.
Oops. So, but anyway, there'll be some hard copies available, especially for those people that just show up. I mean, we live in an area that there's a lot of Amish and Mennonites, and I do quite a bit of business with them. They're not on the internet, and they want to see a catalog, and so I'll be dropping them off, and there'll be some of our feeder buyers, and there might be even some of our cow buyers, and so we'll be dealing with those. But it's available online and pretty easy to go through. It's not a huge book. We don't have as many lots this year as we've had in past years, but we're just kind of getting this back into it again and doing it again. Yeah, and we're starting out. We sold our bulls private treaty for a few years now. We used to sell our bulls as spring calves in the fall for delivery the next year, and we've just put 3 of them in this time, just kind of offer them up and see what kind of reception they get. A couple of flush brothers and one that's out of another cow from the same cow family by a bull we tried this year called Ellingson Practical. And he left us a really good set of calves. I mean, we got a heifer calf that hasn't been beat in class yet that we've been showing since late summer. Just a March heifer calf. We got the heifer calf that we're selling this sale out of. It's a flush sister to the lot 2 bull, and that cow's raising a whale of a heifer calf of her own as well. So we've got those genetics, but we want to offer something that we think is pretty special. I mean, the 2 flush brothers both had adjusted 205s around 750 pounds, and we don't creep feed.
Oh wow, yeah.
This is their recipient's milk and grass, and they just crush the scales. And this the lot 2 bull isn't far behind. He adjusted right at 685. And they're all ET calves, so I mean, obviously the ratios don't mean anything, but we think they're 3 really good, solid prospects that represent our program, that represent the cow families that we're really working with, and the sires that we found that really work and give our customers something to tie to. So. We're going to offer those up. We'll probably sell the feeder calves first, and then we'll probably roll into those. We got some interest on them already, so that's good. We'll probably just roll on through and then go into those females. So that's kind of my plan right now. Plans change, but that's where we're at, I think.
Right. You got 8 open females. Well, hit some highlights on some of those as well.
Well, I think Roger has a really good one. It's by one of his own bulls. Again, I don't think any of us are averse to using our own bulls, our own genetics. And if you look at the pedigrees, you're going to see that too. We're quite happy to use those bulls and get those cows to go through our program again, try and reintroduce them in different ways. But that Chem heifer, her Grand Dam's Chem of Woodlawn, her dam back through was the Whitestone Donor cow, and back page of the journal for a long time. The 119 cow. I actually selected that H75 cow from the Woodlawn dispersal in when it was 2005, and we acquired her from the dispersal of the herd that got her at that dispersal. And she's a really good one. I think that heifer's going to have a pretty good future. The one from Hinckley's, that aficionado bull, again, he's out of that mother of the pregnancy we're offering, and at a C11 son, just a really stout bull. The 189 cow, the dam of that heifer, is just a beautiful female, just a perfect wedge, perfect feet and legs. We had a barrage of white bull that he's the sire of that Erica cow, left us some really good females. And that heifer, I think, has got a world of potential too. She's quite young, but she just has a real good look to her. And then I guess that 11K heifer of ours, she reminds me of her granddam, that Forever Lady 274. She was a right-time daughter out of a Fitchhook cow that we bought from their dispersal in the early 2000s. By Practical, I think she's just a real breeding piece. I think she's something that you could really tie to. You could go a lot of different ways on her. Her mother's just going to be a phenomenal breeding cow. She's pictured there with the bull that's a service sire on some of those bred heifers. And she had a rough start in life. She was the last natural calf for that 274 cow. The old cow got sick in the early spring and died on us in March. And so she got orphaned at like 4 months old. And she struggled a bit. But, man, she's just developed into a beautiful cow. And just a really good producer. She's got a whale of a heifer calf again this time. And we're probably going to flush her again next spring. And then another of her descendants is the Lot 9, the 7K heifer. She's just nice fronted, angular female. Her dam was probably the best 2-year-old we carved out. I think that's a pedigree that's going to be pretty useful to a lot of people as well.
Right.
They'd be my highlights. I mean, that's what I'd pick out of there.
You sent me a picture of the 7K there, the Lot 9.
And
yeah, you want to talk about front end, sweet front end, nice little head on her, and just an attractive female.
Yeah, she didn't, really crush the scale. She ended up with like a 572 adjusted weight, which is, not going to knock a lot of people out. But that was a 2-year-old that did that, and she did it on her own. It was no crete, no nothing. Just get out there and graze. And cow bred back right on time. She actually picked up a little bit of time and got a calf right in early January again. And so there's some pieces there that are pretty interesting. I comment on some of the others. Anyone can call me up anytime, talk these cows. I think there's some real useful cows in there.
Right.
In the making.
Right. Black granite there on the Lot 11. And again, another one you sent me a picture of, and boy, she's a nice one as well. And pictured right there in the catalog as well.
Yes. And she's, she's just kind of, we picked those fall heifers after they were weaned in the spring. I mean, we basically kicked them out on pasture as a mob and ignored them all summer. I mean, we just, we moved them around once in a while, and they're just developing out into just a nice set of replacement females. And we figured, well, we'll go pick one out of there. And she was probably the lightest weaning weight. She was actually raised on an old Charolais cow. It didn't. I think she was more of a companion than a nurse cow. But she was a pretty nice companion, easy to get along with, and she did a nice job. But she didn't have a huge weaning weight, but she just keeps on developing and filling out. And I think she's going to be a very good cow prospect down the road here. If she was here, we'd probably breed her up to Sits Resilient, or we might go with that Rainmaker 4404 bull on her as well. And again, just some good cows and some good type in there.
Got a couple bred females as well. Got 4 of those in the sale.
Yeah, and again, a little bit of influence from our herd in there, from Hinckley's. Again, daughter of that Erica cow. I think she's going to be a pretty good one. And then, of course, you're going to stack that Forever Lady cow family in there as well, which is always good. The one out of the Bridget cow. Bridget was a descendant of a cow I bought from Kelly Schaff. She was the mother of a bull we bought from them in 2003 or 4. And that bull passed away, unfortunately, at the end of the first season. And so I contacted Kelly about, maybe I try and buy his dam. and he made me a very good deal on her. He made a very fair deal on her. She was a 598 daughter, probably the best one I'd ever seen. She had twin heifers for me the next spring, then we flushed her and we got 3 New Day daughters out of her.
Oh, geez.
These go back to one of those New Day daughters. Again, they stuck around forever. I think the granddam of this one, I think we culled her in, she must have been 12 or 13 years old.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So there's a lot of power in there. And actually on the bottom side, that Beacon Bull would be another Z11 son. So he worked real good for us, and they're pretty good females.
Right.
Yeah, and then that Eagle Eye daughter, I say, was one we picked out when we were looking through calves last year, and then we picked her out again when we went through Roger's breds. He wasn't wild about parting with her, but she's bred to homegrown, and homegrown's a sire of the Practical Bull. So
right.
There's a lot to like there. I'm going to have to tie Evie's hands together when that one comes in the ring. So
she may stay right there where she's at then, where she came in.
There's always that risk.
And that's good for the both of you, because you guys can pick up some genetics that you guys have brought in from other people, and those guys have a place to go with them, and know that you're going to support them.
Absolutely.
Couple lots of bred cows in here, and not very old bred cows.
No, I'll let Doug speak on his first, because I've been rattling on here for a little bit.
Sure.
Well, we just got we got 3 bred cows in the sale. You know, Robert had called me about the sale again, and I drug my feet because I left that out in the beginning, but we were expecting another baby in August, and I was a little busy.
Yeah.
So we're starting all over again. So we didn't get any pictures taken. I put these cows in, but these are 3 cows that probably 3 of my favorite cows. The 510 cow,
20, yes.
The Titan daughter, she goes all the way back to, if you go way back in her pedigree, she goes back to the Lindbray EXT 546 cow that won the Kansas State Futurity in 95 or 96. And we bought her out of that Futurity sale. Tom Burke actually sent her to Highfield. And with all the $100,000 cows and everything that were there, she was my very favorite cow on the whole farm.
Oh, wow.
You know, years later, we'd end up selling her to Anderson Circle for like, I don't know, $10,000 in that first sale. And I ended up buying a daughter of her back. And never got the old cow back, but I got a daughter of her. And we probably end up, we must have 10 or 12 descendants of that daughter in the herd still. But this is just a picture perfect, moderate frame, perfect uddered, good footed, nice fronted, just an ideal Angus female in my brain anyway. That's a really nice one.
And she's got a set of numbers to go with her as well.
You know, Titan helps that pretty good. I mean, that was Mike Sorensen talked me into trying Titan years ago, and probably a bull I never would have used, but he was out there and saw the bull and saw some calves, and he's like, yeah, you need to buy a cane of this and give it a try. You know, we weren't disappointed. The Juliet cow, her mother was my pick of the bred heifers at Penn State one year when we were down there. Little bigger framed probably than the Titan daughter. Again, the same type of cow. Huge middle kind of a cow, really powerful, yet still has enough femininity. Again, if we didn't have her mother, that's the kind of cow that you couldn't get rid of. You know, I still have her mother. So started to talk about the 994 cow, which would be lot 18, I'm guessing. She goes back to that Robert Elliott cow. Every one of those Alila cows, it didn't seem to matter what we bred that family to. Every one of them was good. They just, they clicked. They were just good cattle, every one of them. I mean, we had, I think her granddam, I think is a 2500, and she was one of the heaviest milking 2500s that ever walked the face of the earth. That whole family, I mean, we've bred them to, again, I mean, she's got loot in her pedigree. I mean, we thought enough of that family, this $300 loot semen on them to make show heifers for the kids to show, you know, back a few years ago. So that's a good one, and a good young cow that's done a nice job. You know, I'm sure there's holes in all of them, but you know, I stand behind all of them. There's 3 that I'd keep in a heartbeat. The hardest thing about picking cattle for a sale is to put the ones in you don't want to sell.
Right. Yeah, and somebody said the other night, if it doesn't hurt, why, you might not be using the right one. So
yeah, we put a couple of bred cows in there. You know, we talked about not having enough characters for the name. The old Primrose Lady cow, the lot 16. She's a good example of what we're trying to do with our breeding program. The dam side, Pacific, was actually out of a sister to the 327 cow. And so they all go back to that 175K cow I bought from Sunny Valley back in the day. She was a daughter 194H back to 9440, who I think was a dam of Bandolier. And that cow was just a phenomenal cow. She was here till she was 12 or 13 years old. We've had several of her daughters last till they were 12 or 13 years old. 327 was born in 07, and I think we only culled her in 2000, I think.
Oh, wow, yeah.
And in that time, I think she raised 2 different sets of twins. And then we always like to go back in with the Forever Lady cow family, and that Forsyth bull would have been the last natural son of old right time cow by Z11. And we used him heavy in the commercial herd. We got a lot of nice daughters there, and we used him some in the registered herd, and he did very well with them. And those young cows are going to be pretty good. And then bred back to a bull that, again, we sold him to a commercial herd about, 6-7 years ago. Did a really good job there. We bought him back and we used him on cleanup. We got our first couple calves out of him this fall. They look really stout. And we got a few cows bred to him for next spring. That's from our Miss Burgess cow family. And he's it's just a really, that's what we want to do. We just want to keep stacking those good cows in there and keep stacking those good bulls in there and have something that's, predictable and longevity. And then the Blackbird cow is my daughter's show heifer from last year. Raised a really good bull calf. Going to have an exclusive bull calf this time. Just a nice, moderate frame, correct female. I think she'll be a good cow for a lot of years. But that was a little trade-off I did. Too many of these cows have got Evie as the owner now, and she's going to have to sell some of hers too. So
right.
Can't keep them all. So she's going to be hurting on this deal a little bit as well, because that heifer pregnancy that's on the back cover is actually inside a registered Charolais that she showed at Junior Nationals about 4 years ago. That cow raised a whale of an ET bull calf this time. We started using some of these Charolais cows as recips, not so much because of, selling Charolais progeny. It was because there's a strong twinning gene in that Charolais line that we've got. And it seems like the only way to break them of having twins is to throw an egg in them. So.
Right. True.
So at least that only starts out as one, So, and we've got several of those calves of that mating on the ground this fall. One heifer calf that's actually on a cow that raised the foundation bull that weaned off there, like 757. She is good. She is really good. And the donor dam of those embryo calves in this pregnancy is a phenomenal cow. She coming up on 10 years old. She was actually born in the spring of 2013, and she had her first calf at 21 or 22 months in January, and we kept backing her up, and now she's been a September calver for years, and now she's an August calver because we in vitroed her last fall. Phenomenal cow. We had a full sister to her that was born in 2005. That was still here at 15.
Jeez.
And the granddam was here at 12 or 13. The great granddam was around till she was 12 or 13. Actually, the great granddam was the first cow we flushed here when we came to the States. So it's just been a really solid cow family, and that cow's been a really consistent breeder. And I think this is a no-miss mating. We ended up with a couple of bull calves out of our reverse sort sext ultrasound deal. But the bull calf we got on the ground this fall, if there's more like him in the tank, I'm good with that.
Yeah.
Because he's really good.
Right.
I wasn't really expecting it, but he's good.
Right.
So yeah, we kind of used a little bit of a show bull on her, but they're pretty good calves. I like them a lot. We'll probably show one next summer. I wouldn't be shocked if one of these heifer calves that we got this fall ends up at Nationals next summer.
Right, cool. Yeah, and the Cadillac Ranch, those guys are going after him.
Yeah.
And after those progeny, and you got it right here in a heifer pregnancy.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, if you don't want to throw another egg in this Charolais cow, you can breed a straight, because she's bred some pretty good straight Charolais calves too.
There you go. Yeah, some people are like, oh, you got an egg in her, so, she's just a recip. But it's like, wait a minute, guys, we can come right back with her, and we can do whatever we want with her the next year.
Right.
So
some of them are just recips just because of, chance. They happen to cycle just at the right time.
Right.
I want this instead of that. So
you're exactly right. Again, the Tullyfergus Angus sale, Lyons, New York, Saturday, October 22nd. And guys, anything else we need to know about this sale or these cattle?
I was confidence, and phone numbers are in the book. Call us anytime, any of the owners on any of the cattle. We're going to try and get some sale videos and more pictures posted up here over the next week and a half. We don't have an online presence for the sale, but we always pick up the phone.
Right.
Yeah, I would encourage anybody that's interested to call one of the numbers in the book and talk to somebody. Refreshing to hear the honesty with what these four guys will speak to you with.
Right. Right. Yeah, and over those, you talk about not online. We'll try to get you online. Get us some of those pictures and some of those things, and we'll put some things up on our Facebook page. And we're on Snapchat and all kinds of different places. So, yeah, you guys get those, and we'll get this podcast video ready, and those guys can watch those on that podcast video if they don't find them from you guys somewhere.
That'd be awesome.
Really appreciate it.
Doug, Robert, man, it's been a lot of fun, and I appreciate you getting us through these cattle. And, man, you guys have stories that just very, very interesting. And one of the things I love about this thing, and when we started it, was meeting people from all across the country and different operations. And now we're, we've been international once, but we're international kind of again there with Robert coming in from Scotland. So, man, I think
I'm an American now. Okay, I want to be perfectly straightforward on that. I am an American.
Legal
100%.
American.
Legal American.
Went through the whole
100%.
process. Yeah. Right.
Absolutely. Proud to be.
I think that's great.
It was pretty interminable and pretty expensive, but, the reward was to swear allegiance to the flag.
Right.
And that was the proudest day of my life.
Awesome.
No kidding.
I don't think we could end it any better than that. Guys.
Awesome. Thanks, Andy.
Thank you very much.
Great to meet with you guys. Great to talk with you. Again, the Tullyfergus Angus sale, Lyons, New York, Saturday, October 22nd, starts at noon in Robert's new barn that he just put up a couple years ago. So be there for that. And again, the feeder calves, select female lots, and the future herd sires, be there to get those. And again, call those guys in the catalog. Watch for the podcast video if you're not watching it right now. And so we appreciate these guys being on with us, and we appreciate you listening to another edition of